famous for his skill at coming up with stuff on the spot. Pretty brilliant guy. We miss him. It's been a while. It's been several years since we've had a Robin Williams in the world. There was only one. There'll never be another. Maybe there'll be another one as good. But I got to tell you, that guy, what a performer. Aristotle Full Throttle here, and today we're talking about the best improvised moments in movies, in cinematic history. We could talk about it all day. We'll just make it up as we go along. I just want to welcome you guys here. Happy Thursday. It's been a week, you know. They keep changing the regulations on us and whether or not we are clear on what to do. Basically, our mayor here in Los Angeles said, all right, we're going into stage 2 of loosening the restrictions on the coronavirus situation. We're in stage 2, which is, of course, they don't know. Sorry, a little out of focus here. It's funny to me because he actually took calls from the audience, and some people were like, all right, so can I go get my hair did? Can I go get to my haircut during the stage 2? And Mayor Garcetti said, no, that's stage 3. All right, that's the stage 3 of loosening the restrictions. We're in stage 2. You can't go get your hair did just yet. If you do a stage 3 thing in a stage 2, then we all going to have to go back to stage 1. So everybody, be careful. Do the things you need to do to stay safe and to stay clean. Wash your hands. I'm just wrestling with some focus issues here. Wash your hands. Cover your mouth and nose. Stay 6 feet apart. I'm going to repeat it over and over again because there's lots of people who don't quite understand. They don't quite follow the situation. I've got like a projector and a light in the background. I did a lot of working on my composition today, as you can tell. Much better, right? So I think it's hilarious when people still aren't quite getting it. It's not quite sinking in. What's up, Catch M? Aristotle Full Throttle here. We're talking about improvised lines in movies. Many movies over the course of history of movies, you know, there's scripts involved. There's several stages involved in writing a movie. There's the script stage, there's the production stage, there's the editing stage, and every stage in between. So what happens is there's 3 movies that end up being made every time you make one movie. You get the movie that's in the head of the writer. The writer writes a movie in their head, and this is how I imagine everything. And in the end, I want a huge explosion up to the sky. That's what people want. The writer knows what they want inside their head. And then it goes into the production stage. Now they're producing stuff, and now they're like, okay, well, the writer wanted a huge explosion up to the sky, but can we replace that with maybe a car crash? So on the production side, they have got to trim back the script, change things, rearrange things logistically according to what they can do, what they can't do, how they can still execute the story successfully without perhaps damaging the story, but by just switching a few things around and consolidating things in production. And then in the editing situation, they go, uh-oh, look at this. We got to edit this movie together now. And it turns out when you're editing a movie, sometimes you just throw things in the trash. You're like, oh, well, we shot this whole scene and we didn't even need it in the movie because this part of the story is still conveyed in another scene. Or they cut together a certain montage which eliminated the use for a certain scene. Hey, Mom, we're just talking about improvised lines in movies. I started off this video live stream talking about Robin Williams coming up with everything, coming up with things on the spot. I bet you if you were an actor working across from Robin Williams, you just never knew what was going to happen. You just had to stick to the script. If you weren't a good improviser, Robin Williams would probably throw you some curveballs and you'd have to try to knock him out the park. He always did that. I like that they would run the camera on Robin Williams and then just cut together stuff he did, which is a good example, again, of how there's the script stage, there's what's written, and then an actor's job is to come in there and really create the character so that the character arc and the dialogue is in the script. The development of the characters in the script, but the actor, along with the director and the writer, create the character. So they, like, an actor could come along and be like, oh, I know this guy, or a director could come along and say, I know this actor who could be this guy or girl. Hey, Tatiana Wilkinson, welcome. Robin Williams was such a genius. He was indeed. I agree with you. He was very quick-witted, very smart, he just he had no filter. He had no filter. Filters are what you're going to want to put in your mask. Look at that segue. He had no filter. That guy. What's up, Dooney? You're early. You're actually only 6 minutes late instead of 30. What's up, Dooney? Not to call you out, but I think it's funny. Do not follow me. I'm serious. Has shown up. Hello. Today we're talking about improvised lines in movies. Many movies. You know, on the set when the camera's rolling, sometimes if you've developed a character and you're an actor and you're like, I really know this person and I'm actually inhabiting this person right now, I am gonna just go with the flow. And here's one of the rules when you're acting on set. You just keep going until the director says cut. So if directors can be sneaky like that too. They could be just like, you're just acting, you're reading your lines, you're doing the scene, you're doing the script. And if you're in that world, if you're actually experiencing what's happening around you in that scene, you're just going to keep going. And directors can be sneaky. They'll just not say cut. Sometimes they forget. Sometimes they're like talking to somebody. I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen. They'll be like talking to their assistant and they'll be like, okay, then we'll do this at the next to the, and then the actors just keep going. And then sometimes the actors will be like, Jerry, if the director's name is Jerry, or they'll be like Karen, if the director's name is Karen, or they'll be like Kevin, if it's Kevin Bacon directing, and they'll do that. And sometimes that's weird because like they'll break character. You don't want to break character. You want to stay in character. Robin Williams was pretty good at staying in character and also being a ridiculous improviser. Very cool. Hey, Kelsey, Alabama. I like that the entire state of Alabama is joining us today. I've been to Alabama. I've been to Mobile, Alabama. I've been to Birmingham, Alabama. Alabama was a friend of mine. And you, Kelsey, are certainly an Alabama. Do not follow me, I'm serious, says, so who does the credit go to? The director because he saw his genius in the character, the actor because they thought of it, or the actor because they thought of it? I think it goes to both. I think if you're an actor, you're a good actor, you're in the scene, and you're a director, you see something in a certain person and you say, this is the person that I want to play this role. So you kind of designate. Director is really a designator of talents. So a director will pick a cinematographer to work with and say, I want to work with this cinematographer because I want a certain look. I will work with this editor because I want a certain style of editing. I will work with this composer because I want certain. So the director is really curating a bunch of people because of their talents. So the director is partially, and maybe even a little bit more responsible, because if you're like, I want Robin Williams to be this part because I know that he'll come up with crazy stuff on the spot. The credit goes to the talent of Robin Williams, but also for the director for choosing Robin Williams. That's like, when you're in a band or something, you're like, I like the way that this dude plays guitar. That's who's going to be my guitar player. That's how it works. I don't know. Producers could do that with music. Anybody could do that with anything. What's up? Is this Will? Welcome to the Aristotle Full Throttle Show. Every day at noon Pacific Standard Time is when we hang out and chat. During the coronavirus era, there was the before times, and now there's the corona. Don't catch no rona. Listen, guys, I'm going to level with you. I think everyone's going to catch it. I think everyone's going to catch it once, maybe just once. The problem is just don't catch it all at the same time, guys. Let's not all get sick at once. That's what I said. I think that if we get sick at once, that will overwhelm the healthcare system, and people who need help will not get it, and they will needlessly die. So be aware of your fellow human being. We're a social animal. We need to socialize. So just be careful and look out for one another. Is This Will says, I'm here to learn. I don't know the source of most lines. At best, I may know if there was how a movie was mapped out from the get-go, like Time Code. Yeah, Time Code. That's the movie with Jake Gyllenhaal's in it. And it's directed by David Bowie's kid. Interestingly enough, David Bowie's son is named... Here's a funny little story. David Bowie's son, I think, was born... he named him Zoe, I think. So his name is Zoe Bowie, but he actually changed his name. I think he gave his kid like a stage name when his son was born. He said, Zoe Bowie, that's your name. And if we rhyme, it'll be the same. That's the way we play this game. You are Zoe Bowie all day the same. So David Bowie named his kid that, but David Bowie's real name is David Jones. So Zoe Bowie went by his maiden name, I guess, Duncan Jones. And Duncan Jones directed Time Code. However, no, Time Code. Oh, you know what you're talking about? I think you're talking about the other movie by the guy Figgis, Paul Figgis, right? Time Code. I'm thinking of Source Code. But here's another bit of information about David Bowie that you might not know. David Bowie's name was David Jones, but he had to change his name to David Bowie because there was already a Davy Jones, and that Davy Jones was playing in the Monkees, so he had to change his name, not to be confused with Davy Jones. Yes, Will, I figured it out right before you corrected me. Time Code. That's the movie with the 4 screens. I actually saw that in the theater. I think it's like Mike Figgis directed that. Let me look that up. Something about figs. Mike Figs Newton? Newton. Hi, my name is Isaac Newton. Time Code. Who directed that? So the movie that Will is bringing up is there's a lot of improvised stuff, but the cool thing about that movie, I actually saw it as a kind of an experimental movie. Let's see. 2000 film. Yeah, Mike Figgis directed that. It's an interesting concept. So there's 4 screens, right? And the whole entire movie, it's 97 minutes long, and every screen is one long 97-minute take. And there's 4 stories happening on the screen at the same time. So you could just sort of like drift over. He kind of brings your attention to one screen or another depending on the concentration of dialogue and the volume, and he'll bring the volume up so you're kind of like looking at one screen and you could drift over and watch what the actors are improvising mostly. So it was basically a play that they had to rehearse. I think they rehearsed it several days in a row, and then they did like 4 takes of the whole movie, and then they just used one. So the whole movie is 1 take, but 4 shots, if you can conceptualize this. And the cool thing is some of the actors in some of the screens will encounter each other. So now you're watching both angles from the same on different screens, and then the actors will switch screens and then we'll follow them. It's really interesting experiment that no one else has ever tried to redo. Which is interesting. Yeah, Mike Figgis directed that. It's so funny that you brought that up. I did see that movie in the theater. In theater, as they say. So does the credit go to the director? Okay. Should we prepare for the apocalypse? Yeah, Duty. I think we should prepare for the apocalypse. I think you should always be prepared. What you need to do, if we learned anything from Y2K, is to stock your garage with just crates and crates of water. And then you're good. You're good. That's it. That's all you need. Maybe pull your shirt up over your face like this. That's what I was saying earlier, how the Mayor Garcetti of Los Angeles was saying, hey, we're entering a stage 2 in the let up of the lockdown. In like a week, we're going to mandatory, everybody wear a mask in all public settings. Let's do this. Let's get it right. And people were calling it. They're like, can I still go to the hairdresser? And Mayor Garcetti said, no. That's stage 3 of the easing of the lockdown. Going to the hairdresser is stage 3. Sorry, guys. I just realized you're probably not hearing me too clearly on that, on the Instagram here. How about this? That's much better, isn't it? He's like, that's stage 3. We ain't in stage 3 yet. And if we do stage 3 things during stage 2, we all gonna have to go back to stage 1. So if we want to do this right, let's all do the same thing at the same time, except for get sick. Don't get sick at the same time. That would be devastating. Hey, K-Ferg. Davy Jones is not to be trifled with. I agree. Davy Jones was my favorite. I love those monkeys. I wanted to grow up to be a monkey. And essentially, I did. I mean, just look at me. But it's a monkey with a K-E-Y at the end. No, I love the monkeys. The thing about the monkeys that I loved was that they were improvisers too. They would improvise their TV show, and they would play actual music, and they would be funny, and they would play music, and they would do little sketches, and I've modeled my life after that. Thank you. Kate Ferg, welcome to the show. Yeah. From what I remember, time code, the dialogue was improvised. Oh, okay. That's cool. I didn't know that. 93-minute takes were filmed simultaneously by 4 cameramen on the screen divided into quarters, and the 4 shots are shown simultaneously. The film depicts several groups of people in Los Angeles. I should watch that again because I didn't live here at the time, so it'd be interesting to see the areas of Los Angeles that I am very familiar with now. Time code sounds like confusing as Cloud Atlas. Cloud Atlas, you bring that up. That's a movie by the Wachowskis. That Cloud Atlas, I haven't seen it, but I heard that the people, they change, and then they change their ethnicity, and then they change their gender throughout the movie, and you're trying to follow the movie, and everybody's someone else, and then now you watch it. But that's it's actually, Ursula Le Guin was a famous sci-fi writer, and she recently passed away, but she's a very good sci-fi writer. Ursula Le Guin, look her up. Famous, very good writing. She has a book in particular where there are characters who change gender. Like it's just a part of life in the future to just experience part of life as one gender, and then you switch genders, and then there's like a neutral gender. So there's a whole playing around with these fundamental things that we think are normal, but then she realized earlier on that socially, at least, and made it more aware, raised more awareness about the construct that is gender and race, for that matter. I always say this. I always say one thing. I always say this. Race is a construct because it's funny. If you circle anywhere on the map of the world and then just decided to group that circle with common traits, excuse me, you can just decide on arbitrary common traits anywhere if you circle them. So, for instance, if you take Northern Europe, maybe perhaps like Ireland and the Scandinavia, or like, UK, Scandinavia, there's like a lot of light skin, light hair, light eyes situation. And then there's a gradient as you go down southwest through Europe and you enter Asia. Now people have darker skin, darker hair, darker eyes. And then you move across the continent, and then you get to more Asian, what we consider Asian looking features, and South Asian looking features, which are, Indian people and Pakistani people versus Northeast Asian people who are more Chinese or Japanese and stuff like that. So if you were to like circle the people in Kazakhstan, for instance, they share traits from like pretty much all of those groups. And you would say, okay, well, how come they're not considered a race, as it were? Because race is a construct. It's a gradient. There's no like one group. There are more variation in features within a race than there are between races. That is to say, this is a really interesting fact. That is to say, you'll have different, if you group a group of people and say that they're, say, of African origin, of the African diaspora, you would say they will look like this. They will look more different than each other than they will from someone who you would consider European or Asian. It's interesting. It's interesting stuff. Look it up. The point is, gender is a construct, race is a construct, and yeah, we all kind of assume that they're natural things, but they're not. They're just made up things. They're make-em-ups. So if you step outside that box, you'll start to see how ridiculous things are in the world. That was just improvised. I just put that off the top of my head. And speaking of other improvised lines, I put in my thumbnail the shot of the Joker. Heath Ledger, the Joker from The Dark Knight, one of the famous roles, one of the best Oscar-winning Joker actors ever. One of the two. There's a scene where he's clapping his hands when they finally catch the Joker in Dark Knight. Dooney, sorry, but spoiler alert, they catch the Joker. They put him in the jail cell. There's a shot of him sitting in the cell, and they're talking about the fact that he doesn't have any, like, all of his clothes are custom made. He doesn't have any, like, there's no known origin of where this guy came from. And he's just staring into the camera, sitting there, and then he just starts going, like, he just starts clapping like this, which is cool because he's sort of taunting the police, like, oh, congratulations, you caught me. But they didn't really, because it was all part of his plan. Spoiler alert. It's always a part of the Joker's plan. He accounts for everything. He knows everything that's about to happen, so it's pretty cool. He's chaos incarnate. So when that happened, that scene is actually, there's a lot of stuff that was on the cutting room floor from The Dark Knight. Now, what had happened was Heath Ledger tragically passed away. So what Christopher Nolan did in tribute to Heath Ledger was incorporate a lot more footage and made it integral into the movie. So he incorporated a lot more footage that they weren't going to use. It was even just a test shot of the camera sort of filming the Joker sitting in the seat, and it was brilliant that Heath Ledger came up with that clapping thing because they used it in the movie, but that was improvised. Heath Ledger just decided to do that. Hey, what's up, Jimmy James Cordova? Welcome to the show. Today we're talking about improvised lines, improvised moments in movies, and I was just particularly talking about that amazing moment when Joker, Heath Ledger, is staring at the camera and just starts clapping. Also, another great moment that's improvised, but it was improvised, but it was a mistake, but it worked perfectly. The scene where Nurse Joker is leaving the hospital, and he's got that detonator device, and he presses the detonator button. The bombs didn't go off right away, and they only had one chance to do this shot. One shot, one chance. They rehearsed it a bunch of times, and then the pyrotechnics guys were like, all right, we're ready. Heath Ledger is like, I'm ready. He's walking out of the hospital in his nurse's costume, and he's got the detonator, and he's all like, he goes like this, and nothing happens. And then he looks at the detonator, he's like, and then everything starts blowing up. That was improvised. Heath Ledger knew he only had one shot, and then he looks around and then jumps into the back of the bus and then drives off. He only had one chance to do that, so he freaking nailed it, and it's hilarious, and it's perfect. It's a perfect moment. Perfectly in character, doesn't break character, looks at the detonator like, this isn't supposed to happen because I'm the Joker and everything's supposed to work accordingly. So it's funny his reaction, which was to keep hitting the hitting the detonator, which was hilarious. I've seen the movie. I'm a huge DC fan. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Dooney, we know you're a DC fan. Thank you for watching. And I read the Dark Metal comics. Ooh, Scott Snyder. Is he related to Zack Snyder? Because it seems like they have the same name. Or is he related to Scott Pilgrim? Because they have the same name. Yeah, that was a really funny, great scene. Let me catch up on some of these comments on YouTube right here. Time code. I wasn't the biggest fan of Cloud Atlas. Found it hard to emotionally invest due to the lack of through line between the acts that resonated. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I want to check it out. Isn't Heath Ledger in that too? Or he was in the amazing Dr. Fezziwig, or I forget what it's called. Parnassus. That's it. But nationality and race were useful in justifying harvesting resources from other groups of people by force. Will, you just hit the nail on the head. Let me tell you that for sure. This is the thing that I gotta stop saying that. I gotta stop always saying that. It's really important that we realize this, that 400 years ago when they started bringing people over here that had darker skin, they would justify, they would just say, it was kind of socially, now follow this line of thought. If you were to just arbitrarily say, well, this group of people, we are going to enslave the black people from Africa, this group of people, then it's just sort of like an easily identifiable factor that if you have dark skin, then you know who is who in the society. You're like, okay, well, we've arbitrarily just picked this group to be slaves, the prisoners with jobs. To quote a line from, that's my favorite line, one of my favorite lines from Thor Ragnarok, when the Grandmaster's sidekick's like, the prisoners are revolting, and he's like, oh, don't use that word. She's like, oh, sorry, revolting. He's like, no, the P word. He's like, oh, sorry, the prisoners with jobs, not the prisoners, but the slaves. The slaves. Yeah, she says the slaves are revolting, and he's like, don't use the S word. And she said, oh, the prisoners with jobs. It's really funny because it's true, because in America we actually make the prisoners do all the jobs in the prison. The prisoners run the prison and then they get paid like 2 cents an hour, so it's like slave labor. But that's a whole other discussion. The discussion I'm talking about here is that it was really interesting that 400 years ago, starting around ish, that you just subjugate a group of people because of a easily identifiable factor, which is darker skin. And so it could have all been reversed. That's why I like Black Panther, because hey, Killmonger, the bad guy, he's kind of got a point. Killmonger, he got a point. He said, listen, we don't like these colonizers. Why don't we, since we have all the technology and I'm the rightful heir to the throne of Wakanda, I am going to just take over the world, because, we saw how the colonizers took over the world. I think it's a good idea that we just stop them, because the Wakandans are benevolent people. They have decided they've got the most advanced technology on Earth. Why the heck would they even bother with the rest of the planet? So that was an interesting character arc for that bad guy. One of the better bad guys in the MCU. I gotta tell you guys, I had a huge breakfast this morning, so I'm a bit full. It was a very delicious breakfast I had this morning. I can't wait to have lunch. I got a food delivery last night, but that's always fun. That's exciting. What kind of mug is this? K Ferg wants to know what kind of mug this is. This is a hand spun mug made of like ceramic. It's got like this on it. It's got one of those. I don't know if you got a mug with one of those on it. Got a handle. It's brown. It's that kind of mug. Put some coffee in it. I had a friend who was like, you want these? I made them, but I have no room for them. It is a pretty good mug. What I had for breakfast, just like lots of delicious like fruit. That's what I had for breakfast. On the topic of improv, on anthropology, the most racial features are related to the time spent on particular latitude and the natural adaptation or higher. Yeah, see, like you can literally just say that people of a certain latitude are a certain, quote, race, because it's arbitrary. People just decided that certain things made groups of people, and it's not. It's just, We gotta realize that it's a construct, but humans are also tribal. That's like part of our thing. I got a thing about humans that I, that I find fascinating about people is that humans are around, but like 10,000 years ago, there weren't lots of humans. I mean, there were like lots of types of humans. There was hominids. There was Cro-Magnon man. There was Neanderthals, and maybe some other coexisting types of humans at the time. But they all dead now because Homo sapien, the one that we are, presumably, this one stuck around on account of murdering everyone else. We killed all the other people, all the other types of people, or we had babies with them. But it seemed to be in our nature to want to just conquer different lands and kill everybody. Like Killmonger. Nice. K-Ferg made a mug like this 30 years ago. The cool thing about this type of mug is it will last your entire life. I could probably throw this at a brick wall and it would just bounce off. It is pretty sturdy. It is a cool mug. I like it. It makes me feel I'm a large man. I'm 6'3", so like this feels like the right size cup for me. Oh, I just splashed coffee on myself. What am I doing? I'm making a mess of myself. What's up, Mary Ellen? Today we're talking about improvised lines and also the arbitrariness of the constructs of race and gender. But that just came up. That was just part of the conversation. And also what I had for breakfast, which was delicious. Guys, so one of the best, another thing in my thumbnail for this episode of the show, if you saw it, was Jack Nicholson from The Shining. Remember when he sticks his head through the door, he chops the door, and he just cuts a hole in the door? Yeah, I'm going to take a time out from this Jack Nicholson discussion to answer Jimmy James Cordova's question about my coffee. This is how I make my coffee. It's pretty phenomenal. It's an espresso. I make it in a Bialetti espresso maker. I grind the coffee beans fine. It's a medium roast, and then I pour it into heated oat milk with a little bit of coconut oil for the brain. And I put a dash of cinnamon. Just a dash of cinnamon. That line reminds me of Vision when he's like a pinch of paprika because he's making the paprikash in Captain America Civil War, and he's like a pinch. I've never cooked, and cooking is hard. But that's my coffee, and then I blend it up. And it's quite delicious. I'd make you all a cup if you were here. It would take probably about 3 hours because every cup takes like 10 minutes. But you're welcome to join me for a cup of coffee every day at noon, AristotleFullThrottle.com. So we're talking about The Shining. I still want to see the sequel to The Shining. I haven't seen it yet. Don't spoil it. Mr. Sleep or something? Dr. Sleep. Yeah, when Jack Nicholson was... Here's the bad thing sometimes about improvisational acting. Is your other actor doesn't know what the heck is going to happen by the nature of improv. So when Jack Nicholson was chasing down Shelley Duvall in The Shining, they were actually terrorizing her, which not advisable, not good. Do not do that. Do not terrorize any other human beings. If so, go to jail. Go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 unless you're Jack Nicholson and Stanley Kubrick, who were pretty, I mean, in honesty, they were a bit misogynistic and abusive to Shelley Duvall. So kudos to Shelley Duvall for sticking through that situation. However, that line when Jack Nicholson chops the hole in the door and sticks his face in, he says, "Here's Johnny." Because there used to be a show called The Tonight Show. There still is a show called The Tonight Show. But now it's Jimmy Fallon hosts The Tonight Show. But way back in the Stone Age, way before Jay Leno, Nosebleed Jay Leno. hosted the Tonight Show, there was a man named Johnny Carson, and he was funny. He was a funny guy, and every night his sidekick Ed McMahon would yell, "Here's Johnny." So it was very much in the pop culture at the time to say, "Here's Johnny," if your name was Johnny, I guess. So Jack Nicholson's character in that movie is Jack, and Jack is a nickname for John. Maybe we should talk about nicknames and how so stupid some of these nicknames are in movies. I mean, in real life, like my nickname is Sally. How does that have anything to do with Aristotle? I don't know. Baristotle, Full Throttle. Yes. Barry, you can call me Barry. I want to see Dr. Sleep. That was the whole point of that story. Another great improvised line is Midnight Cowboy. I'm walking here. I'm walking here. That was the back of the day when you had to really just steal shots. So they were stealing a shot. Stealing a shot in filmmaking is when you don't have a permit to film on the street or in a place, but you film anyway, and you risk getting caught. This is a very real thing that happens in film. I've worked on many films in Manhattan, independent films, where we didn't have, they're like, look, there's Borough Hall in Brooklyn. Why don't we just film on the steps? It's like, well, we don't have a permit. Well, what does it take to get a permit? Well, you got to go to City Hall, and then you got to like type out the thing, and then you got to do this, got to do that. And they're like, but it's right there. Why don't we just go there? Why don't we just go over there with our cameras and our actors and then film the scene? And then like, well, you need a permit to do that. And then while that person is saying, well, you need a permit, you could just go ahead and film it. Try not to get caught. And then come back and be like, all right, we're done. We don't need a permit anymore. And then just put it in your movie. Because what the hell are they going to do? What are they going to do, guys? I recommend you steal shots. I don't condone breaking the laws. I don't condone going against regulations. But you know what? Steal shots. It's fun. So that's a very stolen shot in Midnight Cowboy when they're walking down the street in Manhattan. It's Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman. And they're doing their dialogue, they're having their back and forth, and as they're crossing the street, a cab nearly murders and drives over Dustin Hoffman, and he hits the hood, and he's like, "Come on, I'm walking here. Come, what are you doing? Well, I'm walking here." It's a great improvised line to keep the scene rolling, to just keep it going, because they know they gotta keep moving. They're moving. We're filming. We can't film this again. Just do the scene. Don't break character. Don't lose. Whenever I see an actor or a character, I get a little upset when people break character, especially on something like Saturday Night Live. For instance, the show Saturday Night Live, it's produced by Lorne Michaels. And Lorne Michaels is very adamant that the cast not crack up or break character, or they call it breaking. It's important because what it does is it kind of takes everyone out of the scene. So a good actor, a good performer will honestly stick with what they're doing, and no matter what happens, you can roll with it, because if you're inhabiting the character, if you're really believing the situation you're in, and there's like a bird that comes in and poops on you, you will respond like the character that you are. You will, obviously bird poop is probably a universal, come on. That's what I would do, even if I was playing Sally Struthers. After all, my nickname is Sally. Jaws. Didn't Brody improvise a famous line? You know what? Let me Google that, because I know there's a very famous line that I tried to bring back one time. If you know the line, it's actually often misquoted. Maybe we'll talk about misquoted lines tomorrow, like Luke, I am your father. It is not Luke, I am your father. The actual line from The Empire Strikes Back is, no, I am your father. But there is a very famous line from The Empire Strikes Back that is improvised. Let me know what that line is, if you know it, in the comments, either on Instagram or on AristotleFullThrottle.com, where you can watch the live stream every day at noon. But I know the famous line, and it's a very good line. They actually brought that famous improvised line back for Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, the terrible, awful Star Wars sequel. It is a bad movie. Don't watch it. I mean, you could do whatever you want, but I don't recommend it, and I would never watch it again. It's bad. except for Babu Frick. Babu Frick is my biological father. But there's a famous improvised line in Jaws, or there is, at least there is a famous line that's often misquoted, and the famous line. Let's see. People always say we're gonna need a bigger boat, but it's, yeah. Let's see. Let's find that line. Actually, here we go. Here it is. You're gonna need a bigger boat. We're gonna need a bigger boat. Let's see. Here it is.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. It's often misquoted. That's a great line. That line from Jaws. I actually tried one time. I was in a costume fitting for a commercial, and I thought I was being all clever, and I was like, "We're all in the film business. We're all gonna get this joke." And I want to share this with you because it was not appreciated on the day that I came up with this. When I improvised this, they were dressing me up. They put a bow tie on me, right? And it was like this big. And then I just went, I looked at it and I said, "We're going to need a bigger bow tie." Nobody laughed. You didn't laugh either, but I love it. And I'm going to perpetuate that comedy as long as I can. And hopefully one day someone will laugh at it. We're going to need a bigger boat tie. Yes, that might be the improvised line from Jaws. We're going to need a bigger boat. It's a great movie, Jaws. The scene where the captain of the ship is doing that speech. Here's an interesting story. He actually got hammered. He got wasted drunk. He got pissed. He was 10 sheets to the wind. He was completely drunk, inebriated. He was intoxicated. And they filmed his monologue, which is like a 5-minute monologue of him talking about that time that he saw a shark, whatever. And he thought, I could do this drunk, and he did it drunk, and then it was terrible. And then the next day, he was like, sorry that I got so drunk. I'm going to do this scene again. And he did the scene stone cold sober, and that's the scene in the movie where he's playing drunk. So the character is drunk, but the actor was sober because he thought in his drunk mind he could actually drink real alcohol in the scene and that would actually help his performance, and instead it hurt his performance. He's an incredible actor, but also he liked to hit the sauce. K-Ferg, I feel like it would be a good... Yeah, we're going to need a bigger boat. So many great improvised lines in movies, particularly the ones that Robin Williams are in. If you watch the original Aladdin, I almost fell asleep there. I had a micro sleep. If you watch the original Aladdin, they had to let Robin Williams just talk. Because the cool thing about certain Disney animation in particular, most animation, you get the vocal performance first and then you animate to the vocal performance so that it matches up. Because otherwise it's hard to do it the other way around. Very much like songwriting, in my opinion. I usually like to write the music first and then the lyrics. But someone like Elton John does it the opposite way. He gets the lyrics and writes the music to it. But they recorded Robin Williams doing all of the lines, and of course he's improvising the whole time, so they had to include that and animate that later in the movie, which is fantastic. And there's lots and lots of outtakes you can watch on YouTube of Robin Williams, the stuff that didn't make it to the movie, and they just have little animatics of it so that you could see what it would have been like in the movie if they used all of Robin Williams' improvisational lines. Bill Murray is very famous at improvising lines. I feel so funky. Dazed and Confused. Matthew McConaughey, that whole scene in The Wolf of Wall Street when he starts hitting his chest. Come on, do it with me. When he does that whole thing, which is now kind of legendary. It's actually a meme where you see like LDC, Leonardo DiCaprio. He's like, what's happening right now? What are we doing? It's really funny to watch that scene in the movie because that was all just reconnaissance coming up with that on the spot, just hitting his chest, beating his chest, and starts singing. And he's like, "Do this with me. This is come on, go ahead and do this. You got to just feel, do the thing." And then Leonardo DiCaprio just going right along with it because he's also a good actor. So they were just like doing the whole scene where they're beating their chest, completely improvised. Movie's directed by Martin Scorsese, and of course, if you guys remember, there's a famous Martin Scorsese film with an incredible improvised scene, all improvised, and they played around with it all day, but they cut it together. But that moment when it was caught on camera, that moment when Joe Pesci says to Ray Liotta's character, what do you mean by that? What do you think? You think I'm funny? Like a clown? Am I a clown to you? And they just went with it, and they're just like, he's like, no, you say things, the way you say things is funny. I like the way you say it's funny. What? Well, like funny, like how? It's so good. It's such a great scene. And the tension builds, and all the actors in the scene are kind of like, uh-oh, is Joe Pesci losing it? Even though they're still in character and they're going with it, but Ray Liotta and Joe Pesci in that whole scene, completely improvised, guys. That was not scripted. That was acted out, improvised by the actors, just kind of going with the flow. I think they might have been filming a montage or something, but I like that a director can say, you know what, guys, keep going with this weird vibe because you're creating the tension, you're developing the characters, you're showing the dynamic between these two characters. The fact that Joe Pesci, who won an Oscar for that role, is such a loose cannon, you don't know what he's going to do, and now the whole mood shifts because you think maybe he's very serious about getting offended by comedy. Guys, and comedy, no one should ever really get offended by comedy. That's my opinion. Don't get offended by it. I think that comedy is the right to air an idea, and comedy is actually judged instantaneously. Whether or not people laugh at it is actually the proof in the pudding. So if the comedian's on stage and they say something that everyone laughs at, it's funny. If they say something and nobody laughs, it's not funny. To sit there and say, well, you can't joke about this, you can't joke about that, that's not necessarily true. You can joke about pretty much anything, in my opinion. The interview with Dennis, keep going, Robin Williams went off another 5 to 10 minutes. Robin Williams had an epic appearance in Dennis Miller's HBO show where he came out cracking jokes about the set, and they played interesting. I hope that's on YouTube. I'll watch that. Thank you for that. Is this Will? I will check that out. So many great improvised lines and so many classic movies. What's your favorite? Do you guys happen to know any? Bridesmaids. You know who my favorite improviser is right now? Melissa McCarthy. There's a movie that she's in. What's that movie with Melissa McCarthy? And Jason Bateman. I think Jason Bateman's in it. There's a movie, yeah. Is it Identity Theft? Maybe? No, it's not that movie. There's another movie where Melissa McCarthy plays the mother of a student, and they're in the principal's office, and you could tell she was just called in for a day because she's only in one scene or two scenes, but they just let the camera go, and she is being so freaking hilarious as a mother who's upset about what their kids are getting into, and she's just making up all the stuff, all the trouble that the kids got into, and it's really, really funny. And it's so funny that they had to show like 5 minutes worth of outtakes of that in the credits because she just kept going, and the other actors in the scene could not keep it together. We're gonna need a bigger boat. Identity Theft. I don't think it was Identity Theft. It was some other movie. But I love some of these improvised moments in film. Arlie Ermy. Guys, do you remember Full Metal Jacket? St. Vincent with Bill Murray. My mom for the win. St. Vincent. That's a good one too. There's a scene, if you guys remember the movie Full Metal Jacket, that first 45 minutes is one of the most intense 45 minutes ever put on film. Everything that R. Lee Ermey is shouting and insulting at all of the new recruits that are in boot camp for the Marines, what he's shouting in their faces, like, you know, just completely disparaging remarks, all kinds of horrible, pejorative things he's saying to them, screaming in their face, breaking them down, because what happens in boot camp is they take you, they break you down, they take away, they strip you of your identity. I will your personality, strip you of yourself. I'm singing a song by Primus, guys. It's called Sergeant Baker Is My Name. If you listen to the lyrics of that, it's pretty much the soundtrack of Full Metal Jacket. All of those lines were written by the actor, R. Lee Ermey, the guy who played the drill sergeant in that movie. He wrote those lines because Stanley Kubrick, the director of the movie, had a script, or he had something like boot camp drill sergeant says certain things. And then, so R. Lee Ermey every morning sat down with the director, Stanley Kubrick, and he was like, Mr. Kubrick, how about I say, like, you ain't worth anything, you are dog poop, whatever he says in that movie, all of the things. And then he went in full character, screaming in people's faces, because R. Lee Ermey actually was a Marine and experienced that firsthand. So he said to the director, this is what goes on. Let me show you. And he actually demonstrated it perfectly. So good. 45 minutes of screaming. The movie itself is indicative because it changes from one thing to another. I'm getting a voice. Hang on a second. Let me try to join this call. Hang on a second, guys. Sorry. Live streaming. Sorry. They can join the live stream if you want. My friends just tried to help me join their live stream, guys. But we could probably do that tomorrow. Maybe have some guys and... I'll get back to them and tell them. Cults. Yeah, the military is crazy. So, Stanley Kubrick was brilliant. Nice. Doing a live stream. Hang on again. Interesting. Let me see if I can do that. This is for another time. I should do technical stuff. I don't have a producer, guys. I'm just the only guy here. Aristotle Full Throttle every day at noon. We talk about movies. We get into it. We break it down. We talk about Jaws. We talk about Full Metal Jacket. I like the movie Full Metal Jacket because the first half of the movie is boot camp. The second half of the movie is war. And it just shows you they're kind of like two different movies. A lot of people fall off that first 45 minutes, but that first 45 minutes is relentless. It does not stop. You're involved with what's going on screen, and I like that kind of thing. Sometimes movies, you got to just put them away. Sometimes you just got to skip it. I don't know. It's like Netflix. You just turn on Netflix and you just start flipping through all the screens and you're searching for what you want to watch, and you spend an hour doing that, and then you go to bed. That's Netflix. You know, though Netflix has this new thing where you go on a show that you were watching previously, and you click on the thumbnail, and then it pops up, and it'll be like in the background showing the episode where you left off, and then you're reading the info, and you're like, and then the info fades away, and then suddenly now you're watching the show. All of a sudden, you're like, now I'm watching something. Netflix decided for me. Yeah, you look like 150 pounds of chewed bubble gum. That's one of the nicer things that R. Lee Ermey says. Arlie, rest in peace. Arlie Ermy had a show about like military weapons that I liked back in the day. That guy, though, it's hard for him to see him as anything other than the drill sergeant. Am I right? Am I right, guys? He was always the drill sergeant in that. Hang on a second. Not really a war movie guy. No too many friends and family I lost. Yeah, I hear you, man. Yeah, Jimmy James Cordova. So you're a Marine. Semper Fi. Yeah, man. That's the thing. I know Jimmy James Cordova is from Texas. There's a lot of military families in Texas, and we salute you guys. You guys put your lives on the line for Americans. We thank you for your service. This country is protected on account of the fact that, we've had to defend ourselves many times over the years. And it's just part of it. It's part about being a sovereign nation. You got to protect your freedoms and it costs lives. And there are people willing to put their lives on the line for that. And that is courageous and important. Thank you. So many movies with improvised lines. Let's see. Spinal Tap. K. Ferg also thanks you for your service, Jimmy James Cordova. Spinal Tap. What a great movie. That whole scene with the amplifier. If you're a musician, you know this very well. This one goes to 11. Famous scene. It's beautiful. Movie directed by Rob Reiner, starring Christopher Guest, starring Short Circuit 2's none other than Michael McKean, formerly Lenny from Lenny and Squiggy. This dude, but Christopher Guest is in the scene, and he's showing the director, Rob Reiner, the different amplifiers he uses. And he points to one, and he says, this one goes to 11. And he's like, well, why does it go to 11? He says, because it's louder. It's one louder than 10. And brilliantly, the director says, well, then why don't you just make the whole amp louder? Why don't you just make 10 louder? And that'll be just as loud. And Christopher Guest is a genius. He's just chewing his gum, looks at the amp, looks at Rob Reiner, looks back at the amp, and says, this one goes to 11. It's like my favorite. As a musician, you hear that, and you hear two things all of the time. You hear this one goes to 11, and you hear more cowbell. Those are the two things I've heard most in my life as playing a. This one goes to 11. Sustained for days. That movie accentuates the stereotype and perpetuates the stereotype that rock and roll musicians are dumbasses. And, I've been around a lot of rock and roll musicians. I've been around a lot of people, and it turns out people in general are dumbasses. Cool. Tatiana is still around. We're wrapping this up. Got a couple minutes left. I might even have my friends join tomorrow on the air. My friends Dave and Lee. They're both creative types, also notorious DIT. We're just wrapping it up here. We got about a minute and a half. We were talking about improvised lines, just in time to say bye. Well, just time to say see you tomorrow. We're going to talk about, we're going to come up with something tomorrow. I'll come up with something. If you have any suggestions, let me know on Twitter. Tweet at me. Let me know what you want to talk about. We could talk about all kinds of things, anything. There's no limits here. There's no boundaries even. Oh, wow. Being John Malkovich. What a movie that is. I'm like getting lost in the Google spiral. But thank you guys on Instagram for joining me every day at noon. I would answer some of the questions that I put up. Yes, you can join. I want to get maybe a conference going. We could do maybe a Zoom broadcast. I have to do a deep dive into the technological aspect of all that. But so many great improvised lines that we talked about today. The Joker in The Dark Knight clapping at the camera, doing a clapback. Uh-oh, poor connection. Good God. My I'll download video and I'll also share to IG. Sorry guys, my camera, my stream on Instagram just decided to die. It's dead now. Yeah, the internet just all craps out. People are on the internet mostly now. Our lives are being streamed live all of the time. Our lives are live streams. All we need to do is just plug our brain into the computer. That's what we need to do. Just plug our brain into the computer. Not unlike the Matrix. Yes. Maybe Christopher Guest movies are a whole genre. I love all of those movies. We could talk about those. Those are actually very possible. I would love to talk about tomorrow. What are we going to talk about tomorrow? Cowbell. More cowbell. I appreciate you guys for lurking for the hour. This is really cool. Nice. Jimmy James has got double stream going on. It's like double stream starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dennis Rodman. You guys remember that movie Double Team? There's a movie called Double Team. There's also a movie called Double Impact, also with Jean-Claude Van Damme, playing Jean-Claude Van Damme's twin brother who says, "I would never in my life wear black silk underwear." That's a great line. And I'll leave you with that, guys. I would never in my life wear black silk underwear. You know, if Jean-Claude Van Damme is known for one thing, it's his comic timing and his dancing. That's his dance. That's his move. I mean, he's got the arms like this, and then he does a split. He's just waiting to do the split. You can tell he's like, I'm going to do this split, but I got to pick my moment to impress everyone. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a little this, and then I'm going to do a split. He does splits. Okay, Ferg, you and me both. I probably watched every Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, every single one of them as they came out on video cassette. I didn't watch them in the theater. The splits, always the splits. Maybe we'll talk about Jean-Claude Van Damme and every time he does a split in a movie. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate it every day. We're here. If you're on YouTube, like the video, share the video. And if you're on Instagram, I could post these videos live on my Instagram TV. So that's a whole new thing. Cool. Thank you for joining me. I'm Aristotle Full Throttle.